Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Caitlin Brower. I am the social media manager at Sterling. We are here again this week for another episode of Sterling Live. Just a reminder, we do go live across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we hope you guys can join us week after week. So I'm really happy to be here today with Chris Cassimus, Vice President of Product Management. And we're going to be talking about how organizations are using proprietary technology and industry expertise and how it can help these organizations navigate uncertainty. So Chris, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and explain a little bit what you do with Sterling?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Cassimus, Vice President of Product Management for Sterling, reporting to you live from New York City. And I'm responsible for Sterling's suite of public records products, criminal records products. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
That's great. Well, someone just popped in and said hello to you. So again, hello to everyone. I am Caitlin and this is Chris Cassimus. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I do want to start off with a bit of an overview of technology and how it enables reliability for CRAs, also known as consumer reporting agencies. So can you give us like a deep dive into kind of like the normal view, the overview of that?
Sure. We'll start pretty abstract and then get a little concrete. But obviously, any company that's assessing a third-party solution in any area, whether that's HR, finance, sales operations, is going to have defined goals and measures of success for that solution, right? Improved operating efficiency, pipeline growth, whatever. And consumer reporting agencies or CRAs are no different, right? We want our customers to be able to hire and onboard reliably, safely, in a compliant way, and of course, at scale. Now, for CRAs, there's also not just the software component, right? The candidate experience, the customer experience, but there's also the added element of how Sterling, or really any CRA, acquires data from courts of record, right? And also how we process that data, right? So as a consumer reporting agency, we are providing data to organizations about an individual for organizations to use in that hiring process. That is a process that can take time, right? And that's where having a really technology-first approach is certainly very important to reduce the time to hire and, again, ensure that companies can onboard quickly, safely, and at scale.
So high-level view there, that was great. So why don't we spin it and look at it during a time of uncertainty, especially right now as organizations are facing, the COVID-19 pandemic. So how does that view look a little different in that, swing of things?
Yeah, and obviously consumer reporting agencies had significant challenges during the height of the COVID period when many courts of record were closed for in-person court research. Now, historically, and I'm going back like years and years and years, generally all or most of court research was done in person. An individual into a court, goes to the public access terminal and or works with the clerk of the court to define whether or not there is criminal or civil data associated with an individual that an organization may be hiring. That landscape has shifted significantly over the last many years, right? To the point where Sterling currently is performing about 88% of our volume through a proprietary technology called Court Direct. Court Direct is a data acquisition engine that integrates with courts of record to provide that data. To actually, Caitlin, answer your question specific to the pandemic, that 12% of the time, right, where court records may not be able to be retrieved entirely in an automated fashion, those became problematic for CRAs because courts were closed or severely limiting access due to COVID-19, of course. And we're still seeing that across the landscape today. What that ultimately meant for our customers, or having a technology-first approach meant for our customers, was that they were able to actually experience a higher level of reliability during that pandemic, right? So over 95% of our volume remained fulfillable during the height of that period. And we also introduced a statewide upgrade option that customers could choose to opt into. Those customers that took advantage of that saw that 95 number grow to about 99%.
Wow. That number is definitely stands out there. So that is great to know that, there is still reliable, coverage and tech like during a time of uncertainty. So great point to make there. So moving into, so we just looked at the overview of, technology and how it enables reliabilities for CRAs. So let's get more into like background check coverage. So we did talk about, the courts and everything like that. So looking into the depth and the span of background check coverage, I do have a couple of questions for you. So some organizations are looking, to bring on and new employees, new members to the team right now. So the organizations that are hiring, are they going to shift hiring policies that they've already had in place for years?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's not a one-size-fits-all answer, right? We are seeing those screening programs, both in some areas remain the same, as well as in other areas shift a little bit due to furloughed employee bases or potentially injecting temporary employees where they had not been in place before. So it's ultimately, I think, a bit of both. And I think that it is actually going to take time for the larger market to define whether there are going to be these wholesale shifts in ultimately what is a standard of hiring and onboarding processes. Certainly those standards and those screening requirements ultimately vary significantly by industry, by job role, et cetera. But I think that we are really going to see in the next 6 months to a year whether we see a large scale shift in how organizations treat pre-employment screening.
So just a little quick side note here. So as I'm asking Chris all of these questions and he's providing great answers here, I want to let our audience know at any time, feel free to post your questions in the comment box, and I'll make sure to feed some of them through Chris throughout this live show. So getting back into it, I do have another question. So as these hiring policies are changing, we did ask, are organizations going to shift what they've had in place in years? So as they change, how can organizations ensure that they have a safe and comprehensive screening program?
Sure. I mean, there's a really short answer to this, and it's make sure you've got the right partner for screening. But the longer answer is, one of technology, right? Are there solutions that are flexible in nature that can support the ever-changing landscape, right? Whether that may be in how organizations hire, who they hire, the scale at which they do so, right? So I think really the key element here is organizations that are very flexible, I think, are going to have a lot of success in whatever changes may come as a result of really, the COVID-19 pandemic and how that's shifted not just obviously the larger economy, but how we hire and how we work.
So I think that's great. And one of the key areas that I pulled out of that from you is that you're looking for a trusted partner. So this is a great segue into our next area where I have a couple of questions for you. And this is going to be probably like our most detailed, like most in-depth section of this conversation that we're having today. So a partner, a trusted partner, you're not just setting up a screening program. You're not just buying a solution. Organizations need to be out there finding a partner and someone that they trust. So let's talk about building a foundation of trust and safety. That's near and dear to the Sterling family. We do talk about that a lot. So CRAs like Sterling, we operate at a critical point of an organization's hiring process. So that point is when a company extends an offer to a candidate. So how important is this for an organization's brand and values?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we wouldn't have asked the question if the answer wasn't very important.
Very
right?
important, yes.
But that's an important point that you made too, is where we sit within the hiring process. Generally, for most enterprise organizations, that is at the point of offer, right? And then can vary, I should say. In the gig universe, we're talking about platform membership as opposed to full-time employment. But that aside, the process that Sterling undertakes within that larger hiring process is not an invisible one, right? I referenced this a little bit towards the top, where there are many of our customers that rely on Sterling to collect data and disclosure and authorization forms that are required to do screening, and that's done via our candidate hub. And in that area, we are very visible and effectively an extension of our customer's brand at that point in the hiring process. Even for those customers of ours that are integrated with us that don't leverage our candidate experience. We are still talking about a process wherein Sterling produces a report to an organization to make a hiring decision. So we're still there in that hiring process. We need that experience to be simple, clean, effective, and really to be able to do it at scale, as previously mentioned. The other call out here, right, is that by virtue of sitting at such a critical point in an organization's hiring process, is that we have the ability to create that simple experience that does not reflect negatively on an individual's brand. That is still the point in the process where, yes, an individual has accepted an offer, and now it's like, wow, I am excited about taking a job here. We want to be an extension of that excitement.
So you do talk a lot about it being simple, seamless. What are the risks that, what if you don't partner with someone that can provide that?
Yeah, I mean, twofold is just any bad experience that you have with a software solution is, one that you want to avoid, of course, because of the negative implications that it has, and especially at this critical point in the process. But even more so on the data side of this, right? This is an area where if Sterling or a CRA takes an additional day to produce a report about an individual, right? That may be a day where we have one less employee in a warehouse shipping out product. That may be one less person staffed in a retail location. That may be one less home healthcare professional that's able to take on work on behalf of their future employer. So time is something that we internally talk about, not just every day and not just on a daily basis, but like really in terms of hours. Every hour and minute is critical so that we can ensure that our customers are able to bring people on board as quickly as possible to fill those very, very needed roles.
Right. So I wanted to give a quick shout out. So on LinkedIn, we do have a comment from Todd Owens. He says, "Hey, Chris, love your products, always have." So thank you for that shout out. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah. So it hasn't always been easy to deliver trust and safely in a timely manner. So why wasn't it always that easy?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of complexities in our industry, right? And again, if you go back years and years and years, it was because largely this was done through in-person court research, right? That's obviously much less so the case now. But I used the number 88% a little bit before this, right? There is still a component of this, that kind of tail, that does take a little bit more time, right?
Yeah.
Because we need to find additional personally identifiable information to ensure that we have a match on a candidate. There may be follow-up research that we need to do at a particular court that's not available to CRAs electronically. Any really number of use cases where this is possible. So that's really part one.
Yeah.
The second is more so on the compliance end. And obviously I know that last week's LinkedIn Live was with Angela Preston, and there was a lot of compliance discussion certainly during that. So I'll do my best not to just regurgitate what Angela.
It's always important to talk about compliance, so
sure.
We're good.
But there's those ever-changing. There's the ever-changing legal landscape, right? There's federal guidelines, state guidelines, local guidelines that influence what a CRA can produce on a consumer report, right? And those are, I say, ever-changing, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important from a technology perspective to have a compliance by design approach, right? I can take a tangible example here.
That's
where we've got in New York and LA, the Fair Chance Act and Fair Chance Ordinance, right? This is really a series of it's a regulatory requirement, a series of questions that employers must complete prior to denying an individual employment based off a report that Sterling or any CRA produces, right? And this is something that obviously Sterling supports, other CRAs do as well. But the call out that I want to make here, and tying it back to compliance by design, is that I think it's important for organizations to make sure they have the right partner by asking the question of like, hey, what happens next time, right? It's New York and LA right now, but what happens when Seattle or Austin or Atlanta implement a very similar kind of rigid set of requirements? And the reason I brought that up, of course, is because the Sterling solution, and going back to it being flexible, is one that is kind of future-proofed from that perspective, right? In the event that a new city follows New York and LA's lead and implements the exact same requirements, it's effectively a configuration for us to roll it out to our entire customer base, rather than having to develop something from scratch or something new.
Right. So I think that's great. And, biggest takeaways, organizations just need to make sure that they are remaining compliant throughout, this ever-changing landscape that you've just discussed. But great examples there. Keep providing them as you have them. So we do have a quick question, and I'm very interested in how you take it, and you can take it. I'll let you spin it the way you want to. It's in regard to Sterling's product line and our products, in relation to the pandemic and how or if it's been affected. So take it from a Sterling standpoint, or take it from an end-to-end background screening provider standpoint. I'm good with either way. I know we already spoke about court closures. That was probably one of the biggest things that we saw impact a lot of organizations during this time, but definitely interested to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. It's one that we could probably spend the next 30 minutes talking about, if not more.
Do you have time?
I know that our time is probably a little bit less than that. But ultimately, right, I mean, the importance is both in all of those different metrics that I've articulated before. And again, making sure that you can hire quickly, reliably, that you can inject trust and safety into your onboarding process and do so at scale. But right, there is a lot more to it than that. I mean, we talk about internally all the time how important our technology is, but it's built by people and it's built for people.
Right.
And that human element is really how Sterling can layer on that foundation of trust and safety onto an organization's hiring process, right? And that may be in the form of benchmarking against what similar companies are doing through, a customer service rep, customer success professional, et cetera. It may be looking at larger macroeconomic trends and looking at hiring predictions to help balance process, program, and ultimately people to make recommendations on ways that organizations can improve their hiring process, right? And I say can improve their hiring process. While of course I'm talking specifically about screening, right? But it's also, I think, important for any organization to ask the right questions as far as what precedes screening in your hiring process and what comes after it. Right. Without asking those questions and thinking just as a Sterling or a CRA as a black box, you're actually going to miss a lot of the larger workflow benefit that Sterling can provide by virtue of leveraging our technology. And some of those answers kind of sit in the who does what that sits before screening. And once screening is completed, what happens next? Who's responsible for it? And are you running into any challenges there that Sterling can help you solve?
Yeah, so it's a great point that you bring up, and super important, because it's about that tech and human component. It's not the technology. We're talking about industry expertise too. So we're leveraging the best in class technology for screening, but then also, getting that insight. So getting guidance, getting best practices, like you just said. But I know you did dive into it, but a little bit more, how does that give organizations a leg up? How does it, get them to the next level by putting that tech and human component together?
Sure. I mean, I think the answer is, I say somewhat basic, underlying or sitting underneath it. It obviously can get a lot more complex, but an organization that is looking to hire at scale that can do so faster and more reliably is going to have an advantage on an organization that does not. Right. Similarly, on the more of the culture and brand extension side, right, an organization that can trust a CRA with an extension as an extension of their brand, largely is going to have a better day one impression, or the impression that leads up to day one, which obviously impacts a new employee's perception of the organization and contribution to the larger culture and brand values that an organization has.
So when an organization is providing this guidance, providing this industry expertise, best practices, things like that, normally which teams are involved with that?
Yeah, a lot of them, right? I mean, it's driven by our very talented customer success teams, right? But sitting right beside them, and I say this as a person who, when in an office, literally sits right beside them, is our product management team, our technology team, our operations team, to really support that the customer success group in making sure that they have what they need to enable their customer success.
Is there any particular example you have, of helping a client, from Sterling? What questions are they asking? How have we helped them with particular best practices, industry expertise, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the last few months it's been pretty specific to the COVID-19 pandemic and how can we continue to hire and acquire data, and also meet our corporate guidelines for background screening and bring an individual on board. But on a larger scale than that, it's really a partnership, right? Where we have worked with organizations to help eliminate waste. Again, maybe sitting ahead of screening or sitting after screening, leveraging our technology to provide efficiency, right? Or leveraging our industry expertise to provide those recommendations that change a program or modify a program that ultimately better meet an organization's ever-changing needs, right?
No, that's great. So and it all comes back to, finding a partner. It's not, again, just buying a solution, setting up a program and it being one and done there. You really should be looking, for a trusted partner, as we move through uncertain times, as things maybe get normal. But you still need to look for that key partner there to really implement something that will be successful for your organization and kind of give you that leg up to everyone else. So as we come to a close here, I do want to let our audience know again, please, if you have any questions for Chris, send them in right now. So we'll start, taking some questions. He can provide you with some great answers. But any final thoughts you have, Chris, for our audience from today's discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think summarize, right? Proprietary technology is important. We can gain, or we can help organizations gain efficiencies through leveraging that. But software and technology is only as good as the people that use it and the people that build it, right? So having a trusted advisor as your partner that can help guide you in the best practices of not just where screening sits within a hiring process, or here is industry guidance on the FCRA or state and local guidelines, but also leveraging that very specific solution to create an end-to-end process in the hiring workflow that is one that not just works, but that improves the current process that exists today. Right.
That's great. Well, so it looks like we don't have any questions right now. So this comes to the close of our discussion. Honestly, it was a great one. There was so much information, so much important information that you've provided our audience with today, Chris, always providing great insight, whether it's on our website, during this live stream, or any future ones to come. So I do want to thank everyone who joined us today, especially thank Chris for joining us and providing everything that he gave us. At any time, you guys can visit us at our website, so www.sterlingcheck.com. You can always talk to us on our social media platforms. And just a reminder, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, we do go live across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we hope you can join us. So again, thank you so much to our audience, and thank you, Chris, for joining us today.
Thank you.